Hi guys, Alex here. I am hopping on to talk about the overview of the 4 phases of the cycle, and this week is going to be all about the 4 phases, and I'm going to be breaking it down because I know we talk about this a lot, but it can seem a little complicated when you're coming from the world of just, I've been living with my period, and so my period is something that just happens once, as an event, and then the rest of the month I go on with my life, and we're really trying to help women understand that their cycle is something that is a superpower for them. Oops, sorry guys, I don't know how I changed that. How do I get back? Okay, good. Sorry, I mean that's my office. So let me just type in what we're going to be talking about real quick, so I can pin it. Okay, and then we're gonna pin that comment. That way people know what we're talking about. So 4 phases. So like I was saying, there are a lot of components to the cycle that are not just getting your period, right? So there is this cycle that is continuously happening inside our bodies as women. So men have a 24-hour clock, and so do we. And then on top of that, we also have a superimposed longer cycle that is running the clock of our body. So there's the circadian rhythm, and then there's the cycle rhythm. And so whether or not we are utilizing the cycle to our advantage or not, it is happening. So that is really important to notice. This is something that you can either choose to engage in or not, but it doesn't negate the fact that it's happening inside your body anyway. So whether you are ovulating, whether you are breastfeeding and have a regular cycle, whether you have a wonky cycle, whether you're on birth control, it does not matter. This is still happening on the back end. And that's why we feel so passionate about returning to this topic of the cycle throughout the entire month over and over again, because we want women to realize that this is a superpower that they have access to all the time, and it's actually working for them. And it's easy for us to feel like, gosh, my period is just cramps, bloating, irritability, and all of this bad stuff that we think of. But when we really get down to it, it's the fact that we are fighting our cycles all the time in our modern life, that then it becomes a problem. And if we can step back and get into the mindset that this is something that is of use to us, as something that can improve our lives, can improve our everything from productivity to our relationships to, having the business that you want. Like, this is all our experience of our life is so crucial to our success. And so to remove the cycle from our daily life is to sort of fight the physiology that we were given to work with. So anyways, that is what my rant on why this is so important. And so let me clear up a couple things. So there are 4 phases of the cycle, and day 1 starts on the day your full-blown period starts, so full flow of the period. And then after that, that lasts about 7 days for the average female. So day of your full-blown period, just about 7 days later. And then from that 7 days later starts phase 2 and goes until you ovulate, which is why we have our ladies who work with us or, are following the cycle, either do LH strips or basal body temperature tracking so that you know when your phase 2 ends. Okay, that's phase 2, and this is the first half of the cycle, these phases 1 and 2. Love the idea of making our cycle work for us. Yes, Anne Marie, I mean, this has just been so key, and the more we live this way, the more we are realizing how much of an advantage it is. So these first 2 phases up until ovulation is when we focus on optimizing inflammation in the body. And that's because you can't send the signal from the hypothalamus and the pituitary down to the ovaries to kick off a make a follicle and actually ovulate the egg. If your body does not feel safe to do so, if it's overinflamed, if there's something that it doesn't feel safe on, it's not going to try to make you a baby, right? And it doesn't matter if we're trying to actually get pregnant or not, even though I know a lot of our ladies are trying to or are planning for it. The ovulation is kind of the main event. So the more we can optimize ovulation, have a healthy signal to that, then we're going to be good for the rest of the month. And that, a lot of the problems that happen in phases 3 and 4, like spotting, irritability, cravings, bloating, you name it, is because something went wrong in the first and second phases. Okay. So yeah, phase 1 starts day of your full blow period. Spotting does not count. That's a phase 4 problem. And so full blown day, first full flow day of your period starts phase 1, lasts about 7 days. Then you move on to phase 2. Phase 2 ends when you ovulate, okay? And then that kicks off phase 3. So after you ovulate, there is phase 3, and phase 3 lasts about another 7 days, and then we move on to phase 4. And so phase 4 is from that moment until the next cycle comes around again, okay? So phases 1 and 2, we're all about optimizing inflammation. Like we talked about, we want to make sure that ovulation is happening well so that we create a follicle. Then after that egg is ovulated for phases 3 and 4, then that follicle keeps working. It makes progesterone so that we're not spotting, so that we don't have anxiety, so that, our estrogen isn't super high and kicking off histamine and causing a whole bunch of problems. The reason that we are so passionate about the phases, or one of them, is that what it really comes down to is that when you optimize the success of each phase, then you go on to create success for the next phase that follows. And so we always want to be going phase by phase by phase, cycle by cycle by cycle, and you end up in this big avalanche snowball type thing of positivity. So in optimizing each of the phases, you do it one cycle, then your chances of having a successful, good, non-pathologic cycle is even greater for the second phase or the second cycle. Then when you optimize the phases of that second cycle, your chances of having a good third cycle increase even more. And so you end up getting this whole snowball idea of positive upward movement. And that's why we're so passionate about just letting you know about when the phases actually are, so that you can start optimizing your own body and make it work for you. That where your problem areas are. For me, phase 2 is awesome. For some women who have estrogen dominance especially, phase 2 can be a little bit touch and go with irritability and bloating and stuff. So it is all personalized, but you can only begin to learn what your body is telling you if you understand the construct in which it is talking with you through, okay? So we have lots and lots of resources. If you go to, I'm going to type this in, 4-Phase Cycle Podcast with Zesty Ginger. We have an entire season 1 of the podcast is dedicated to teaching everyone and going through all the details of the cycle. So if this is new to you, or you are looking to use the superpower that you have access to, go check that out and start listening, because it's going to have a ton of aha moments. All of a sudden, all these things like cravings and bloating and poor sleep and irritability are going to start actually making sense for you, and you're going to realize how much this has been playing a role. And then for Megan and I, once we saw the patterns, it was like boom, 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 onto the next positive thing. It really spirals quickly when you start doing it. So that was just a quick overview. One thing I forgot to say, that in phases 1 and 2, I know I'm doing my little hand puppet thing. Phases 1 and 2 were all about optimizing inflammation. phases 3 and 4 are all about optimizing detoxification, because at that point we really need help clearing estrogen, progesterone metabolites out of our body so that the signal is correct in between the ovaries and the hypothalamus and the pituitary. If that detoxification step doesn't happen, even if you have low estrogen and progesterone, then that really messes up the whole thing. So I know that seems a little counterintuitive, like, why do I have to metabolize estrogen if it's low? Well, it really comes down to optimizing the signal that we are trying to fine tune inside our bodies. And so that is, even for low estrogen or progesterone states, we still want to make sure our phases 3 and 4 are optimizing detoxification and all of the detoxification organs. This isn't just the liver. We aren't those kind of detox gals. And make sure that, I think we have either an Instagram TV video or it's on in our Facebook. The RSSC Ginger support group on Facebook is totally free, and you can go check out all our longer videos on there. But we have a video about all of the detoxification organs, right? So lots of resources for you ladies. Please send your friends over who are struggling with hormones or just in general health, because so much, I'm going to go on to, I feel a tangent coming, but so much of our world is set up to be male physiology dominated, like even all the amazing people like the Tony Robbins and all of those, like all the productivity stuff is created based on the male physiology and extrapolated to assume to be working for women. And we don't agree with that. Now, that doesn't mean we can't use all of the amazing resources that are out there. We just have to understand that we have to change things over and modify it for ourselves as women who want to be productive and feeling good inside our body. So anyways, I'm going to try to skip the whole tangent, but if you have girlfriends who are struggling with just being inside their female body and just knowing what's going on, please send them our way. I'm going to be doing a whole week on the topic of the 4 phases. I'm going to be going into each one specifically and talking about problem areas and then strengths that we can reframe instead. Send them over to our Instagram profile so that they can keep track, and follow along with that. And then also check out the podcast, because that's obviously going to have now 3 whole seasons worth of amazing content that you guys can go check out. So that's that for today. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will be back tomorrow afternoon. I'm not 100% sure on the time, but it'll be in the afternoon, and I will hop on and I'll be talking all about phase 1 specifically. Any resources for pregnancy I should start with? A lot of the content still applies for pregnancy. The only thing to modify is the liver and detox tools. So we have people skip all of the supplements, but things like dry skin brushing, acupressure mats, and all of that still apply. So it's in the category of making sure that you're not adding things like chlorophyll, milk thistle if you haven't already for pregnancy. Like if it's something that you had on before, Megan has continued it when she was pregnant, but if you haven't started anything, I wouldn't start that new, but everything else applies for pregnancy and for breastfeeding. Cool? All right, ladies, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for your wonderful questions. I always love them. I will be back tomorrow with phase 1 goodies, and I'll see you then. All right, bye.